Well, hello and welcome back to Critical Weight Theory, aka CWT. It's a show where sometimes I look at iconic films and the stories behind them. Other times I might discuss politics or society or music, you know, TV shows, any number of things. Sometimes just random topics. But today we're talking about A Bronx Tale, the 1993 crime drama that marked Robert De Niro's directorial debut and gave us one of the most powerful coming of age films in the genre, especially from the 1990s. So I had seen parts of this movie, when I was, I guess, younger. And maybe it equaled like seeing about half of it or something, or maybe a little bit less than half. But I finally got to watch the full movie when I was over at my mom's house. We watched it, and then I rewatched it again for this episode. And you know what? It's still a good movie, even though I didn't have that much experience watching it when I was younger. It it is always a good sign for a movie to still resonate with you, even though you don't have that nostalgia factor that much with it. You know what I mean? So yeah, this movie, you don't need that nostalgia factor in order to better appreciate this. It's just a well done film. Now, if you're expecting nonstop mob shootouts and cigar chomping gangsters, A Bronx Tale isn't exactly that movie. I mean, it does have moments like that. It is a mob movie after all, so there's a little bit of that here and there. But this one's more personal, more grounded, and that's exactly what makes it work. So I'm going to set the scene for you. It's the 1960s, the Bronx. We meet Calogero, nicknamed C. And if you can't properly pronounce the name, the movie kind of, winks at you and says it's a different sort of name because C himself, notes that it's a little bit of a different sort of name. So don't feel bad if you can't pronounce Calogero. It's 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 okay. And anyway, he's a young Italian American kid growing up on the edge of two very different worlds. On one side, there's his father, Lorenzo, played by De Niro himself, a hardworking bus driver who believes in honesty, discipline, and keeping his son uncorrupted by the streets. And I really like that character too. He's really another person who's from the streets, only in a different way. He has a different set of values from the gangsters out there. And you know I've liked that the movie depicts a working class man and a working class family in a positive light. It doesn't make him look like he's a total buffoon. He's a very principled person. He's cool, and he's down to earth, and just a likable character. Now, there are moments in the film that show him as being a flawed character too. It is one of those type of movies. It doesn't overly romanticize him, but overall, you get the sense that he's a good guy who means well, and that's about as important as anything else. And well, on the other side, there's Sonny, who is charismatic, dangerous, respected, plays played by Chaz Palminteri, who also wrote the screenplay based on his own one-man play and childhood in the Bronx. Sonny is the local mob boss, and to Calogero, he represents excitement, power, and the freedom from the working class grind, the life of drudgery and hard work. And it's also a sort of class commentary that one of the main characters, he really wants to escape the working class life. It's he's caught between those two worlds where he knows that there's something respectable about his father, but he also knows there's something, that is respectable about the other side of the streets, so to speak. But his father, and I mean, I'm going to do a little bit of a potential spoiler here, but his father does tell him that, you know, the character of Son, or not the character, but Sonny is not respected. He's feared, and that there's a difference. I love those little moments in this movie where, uh, C's father actually, stands his ground and sort of lays down the law and says, look, I don't want you to be associated with this person. He's a bad influence, and people don't actually love him. They fear him more than they respect him. And that's a really cool dynamic in the story. And that's really the conflict. He has two father figures, two paths, and there's one kid stuck in the middle. And I suppose in the grander narrative you could say there are all sorts of people stuck in the middle, because the appeal of sort of the gangster life, I wouldn't say it's universal, but there's definitely a wide appeal. There's a reason that some people end up doing a black market, economy, and it's not just to escape poverty. There's also a lifestyle appeal in that. I mean, let's not kid ourselves and think that it's always the case that somebody joins up in a gang or whatever just to escape from poverty. That's definitely one of the main reasons, but it's not the only one. There's also an appeal to having power, not having to be bossed around by anybody, and or by like mainstream society, and to just lead a comfortable life without having to work a 9 to 5, which, let's face it, a lot of people frown upon. And there's reason for that. You can feel like well, to borrow Trump's apparent language, a sucker or a loser if you're working a regular job. There's there's something to be said about the dignity of work, as Calagiro's father makes clear. But at the same time, it's not necessarily that dignified either. You can feel like you're a sucker, you're being taken advantage of, exploited, whatever, any number of things like that. Especially if you're not very well paid and all that sort of thing. So, the characters in this movie, and of course people in real life, are very well aware that there's a thin line between being a hard worker and being a sucker. That's just the truth. People have been making note of that for, well, since there has been work. you know and this isn't just a mob story. Obviously, it's a morality tale as well. It's about choices. Identity comes into play, racism, loyalty, and they're navigating a world where right and wrong aren't always black and white. So that's one of the murky aspects of this movie. There's a very clear path in a lot of movies for the characters to go down, but here it's more like real life, and that you're not always going to make the right decision, or have the right information or whatever. It's a complicated world, and I think A Bronx Tale really taps into that whole dynamic. It's a very realistic movie. And speaking of black and white, there's another layer here: race, as I mentioned earlier. So as a teenager, Calogero starts dating Jane, a black girl from his school. This relationship doesn't just create tension, it forces him to confront the racism ingrained in his neighborhood, his friends, and, to some degree within himself. Because he was sort of looking the other way until he met this girl. It's one of the film's most powerful threads, and Palminteri doesn't shy away from the discomfort either. He really depicts it in a rather realistic way, you know? And I think when it comes to drama, discomfort is obviously something you're going to feel if it's well done, because you don't really watch a drama expecting to be comfortable. It's not as much of a pleasant experience as, just some mindless thing that you put on to be entertained by. There are entertainment or entertaining moments in this movie. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say you're not going to have any fun at all in this story, because it is surprisingly fun. Like, I don't really know how to successfully convey that, but you're going to have to trust me if you haven't seen this one. So, what makes A Bronx Tale stand out is that it's got an emotional core. Sonny isn't just a cardboard villain. He's dangerous, sure, but he also gives Calogero life lessons that sometimes mirror what his father teaches, just from a different angle. It forces the audience to wrestle with morality in shades of gray. That's what I really like about a lot of stories. They encourage us to see the, I guess, the breadth and depth. Boy, I can't talk. The breadth and depth of a lot of different questions. That's one of the results of a story well told. And yeah, this one's one of the all time great gangster movies, I guess you could say. I've never made a top 10 of those types of movies, but I think this would make it into the top 10. It's that good. So there's also this one line that sticks out, at least for me, and they kind of make it stick out a little bit. But the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. It's said more than once, and it becomes the heartbeat of the film for both Calogero and for us watching. So there are some really great performances here. Lilo Brancato plays young Calogero with his perfect mix of wide-eyed curiosity and growing conflict. There's Terrell Hicks as Jane. She brings warmth and sharpness to a character who easily could have been underwritten. Admittedly, she doesn't have that much screen time, but when she does, it matters, and you can see how she impacts the main character, or the C character. And as far as side characters, there's some good ones here as well. I think my favorite is, uh, I think one of the better performances is by Dave Salerno as Frankie Coffee Cake. It's a small role, but unforgettable in its you know in its simplicity. Like, for just a sort of random character that gets nothing but insults, it's somehow memorable. And then there's a character named Mush. I don't remember I don't remember the name of the person who played him, and I don't have it written down. But he's obviously a memorable character. And from what I understand, Chaz Palminteri got the actual man that he was, sort of writing about to play the character. So basically, he's bad at gambling, and it becomes a running joke in the movies. So there's a part where they, uh, you know, uh, Sonny goes to the racetrack with C, and he's all excited about the horse that he placed a bet on, but it turns out that the Mush placed a bet on the same horse, and then Sonny instantly knows that it's going to be a losing bet, and sure enough, it is. It's really a pretty simple type of joke, but it is pretty funny, and I guess I spoiled it if you haven't watched the movie. So, you know, whoops, you might want to watch it first, as I'm sure most of you had enough sense to do. if you're listening to this episode. So the casting, it really helps the story's authenticity. The acting is great. These characters feel lived in, and that's because they are. Paul Monteri's script apparently draws directly from his own life in many ways. He knew these people, or people like them. To some degree, he was this kid, and apparently he actually did witness a mob hit when he was younger, at least according to him. So I don't know the full story there, but that kind of truth bleeds through the screen. He also did the story as a one-man show, a movie, and a Broadway musical. Apparently the first person to write and star in all three creative avenues, and his passion for the story and its authenticity really shows through. Everything flows naturally, and I don't think anything felt forced. You know, I struggle to even like conjure up a critique of this movie, to be honest. Like if I was really trying to be like, my most stereotypical critical type of person, I guess what I would say is maybe that it could have used a few more jokes or something here and there, you know, uh, to lighten the mood up a little bit. But it still does have jokes. I'm not even saying that's like a serious critique. It just could have used a few more jokes to lighten the mood in a few places. But other than that, like, I can't really think of any serious critique. I'm sure some people out there, you're gonna find something wrong with it, but for me, it's just a top notch movie. So why does the movie matter? Why should a person watch it? Because it's not just about growing up in the Bronx. It's sort of about growing up. Period. It's about fatherhood, mentorship, identity, and the moments that shape us into who we are. De Niro could have picked any flashy script to make as his directorial debut, but he chose this one, and he really hasn't directed that many movies. I think it might be just this one and some other movie. And that says something. He went out of his way to do something that, he probably doesn't feel like he needs to do very often. I don't think he has the directing uh, interest as much as he has the acting interest. But he did a great job in this movie as far as that goes. Like, he didn't botch this movie, you know. So for a directorial debut, it's pretty stellar. So I feel like I'm gushing over the movie a little too much now. So if you're in the mood for a film that trades spectacle for substance and packs an emotional punch without needing to shout, A Bronx Tale is worth revisiting. That being said, the monst or the mobst monsters, the mobsters versus bikers scene is a classic moment that offers a little bit of entertainment for those who want a little bit of that, mob movie macho ness in their story, because that scene, it's fun. It's a sort of badass moment that shows why you don't want to mess with the Italian mob, even if you're a sort of uh, badass biker gang, so to speak. Like, you, you you're not going to want to mess with these people. Basically, that's what that scene conveys, and I think maybe this movie needed a scene like that just to remind you that, hey, these people really are dangerous. You know, so you can't even say this movie absolutely has nothing like that. I think I think there's this moment, and of course a few other moments peppered in that show you that, oh, these people are, they are criminals. And I guess that's all I need to say about it for today. Maybe I'll even talk about the movie in the future at some point. But if you liked this episode, what I have to say about this movie. You can give me a follow and share uh, this content and other episodes with someone who loves a good story. So until my next episode, I'm Wade, and this is Critical Wade Theory, where, I look at these great movies sometimes and I babble on about them for a little too long. So, all right, have a good one.